Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today we are talking about everything, everywhere, all at once. But before that, we are talking about Swiss Army Man, The Bubble, and touching back on Severance Season 1 wrap-up conversation. So, join us.
Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me I have a new special guest, Mike. Tell me what dimension you're from and why you came to this dimension to talk about this movie.
Well, I am from the dimension where I've already recorded this episode, so I came back to make sure everything went smoothly for you guys. Because you don't want to know what happened when we recorded it the first time in the dimension I came from.
Yeah, you're right. I don't.
It didn't work out for you. Let me just say that.
Especially. Knowing your future's bad. Well, this podcast should be interesting for sure. I have another guest with us, Justin. What dimension are you from?
I'm from the dimension where I have horrendous allergies and probably sound a little funny, or at least feel like I sound funny. And also maybe hopefully the one where I know what I'm talking about and do a good job talking about movies.
Yeah, that'll be a new thing for the podcast.
Yeah. Are you from another dimension, or are you just like regular you?
Regular me. Someone has to, do this interdimensional relationship. Yeah, balance the whole thing out. So it's just regular Chris. As opposed to all the other Chris's
that
I
could
like
possibly
Chris.
be here.
Yeah.
All right. If this is your first time listening, normally we like to start off every episode in a section called News on the March, where we talk about film and TV news, or just the movies and TV that we have been watching. Then we move into our feature review, and this week, like I said at the top of the show, we will be discussing everything, everywhere, all at once. And it's all time-stamped, so look in your show notes if you haven't seen the movie. You could still listen for a bit.
That's right. And also here on the Casual Cinecast every other week, or just about every other week, or just about every other episode, we like to put out a Casually Criterion episode. In those episodes, listeners choose a film from the Criterion Collection for us to review by voting in a poll that we put out on our Twitter account. So check out our next Criterion episode from Mike telling us what won our last poll.
Oh my. All right. So our recent poll had the theme of Oscar winners, because at the time we were doing it, the Oscars were in conversation. And we each chose a film in the Criterion Collection that has won an Oscar. Now, I chose Clute, Chris chose Philadelphia Story, and Justin chose 8.5. And Justin won. 8.5 won with 36.7%. Philadelphia came in second with 33.3%. Philadelphia Story. And Clute lost with 30%. As I predicted on the show last week.
But what a turnaround. Clute was in the lead for so long.
It's because I stepped out of the gate strong and was like, come on, Clute supporters, do your thing. And they did for a brief time, and then it went away.
And depending on the length that we set up for how long the poll is going to be active,
that's really
sometimes it's a marathon.
If it had been like a 2-hour, 3-hour, one-day poll, Clute probably would have won.
That's true. It was ahead for a long time. So as we said, that poll is up on our Twitter account, so you can follow us there at Casual Cinecast. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Casual Cinecast, but Twitter is the place where we are the most active and the only.
It's the only social media place where I'm active.
Yeah, that's true too. Individually, for Mike, myself too, I don't really do much anywhere else.
Yeah.
But anyways, you can message us on any of those social media accounts. You can also send messages to casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And then, of course, if you haven't done so already, you like the show, give us a review, a 5-star one, a 10-star one, a positive one, a thumbs up, like, subscribe, all that stuff. You know the drill.
Yeah. Please and thank you. Okay, and with that, I think we should just get into news on the march. What do you say, gentlemen?
Yep.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea.
I knew it was time because I've recorded this before, you see, so.
Oh.
It had to happen then.
It's going to be a running joke the whole podcast.
It has to happen now.
News on the march!
All right, we're here in News on the March. Mike, thanks for keeping us on time. And why don't you go ahead and kick us off with what is on your mind?
Well, that's the way it's supposed to go, so that makes the most sense. All right, anyways. So this week, I have been mostly watching TV shows, trying to catch up on TV shows, but I did watch a new film that arrived on Netflix. It is from a director that is pretty hit or miss for me, but sometimes I like his failures almost as much as I like his successes, if that makes sense. And I'm speaking about Judd Apatow. I don't like 40-Year-Old Virgin. I think it's a terrible movie.
Maybe
I do like
dimension.
Knocked Up. I think Funny People has redeeming qualities, as does This Is 40, but they're entirely too long. Chris, what'd you say?
I said maybe it's not good in your dimension, but it's good in my dimension.
We'll see. We'll see.
All right.
But no, for real though, I think all of his movies have problems. Even Trainwreck, I think had heart, but ultimately, I don't love any of his movies as much as I want to. So, anyways, this movie hit Netflix recently called The Bubble. And have you guys heard of this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, it had a pretty good cast. Leslie Mann, of course, Karen Gillan, Pedro Pascal, a lot of people, a lot of cameos. Anyway, it's about a film crew during the pandemic trying to stay within their isolated bubble so they could get done filming this movie called Cliff Raptors 5, which is like a franchise about cliff raptors that fly around and eat people or something. I don't know what it is, but it's the franchise they're making. Anyways, and it is about how zany and wacky all these characters on the film set are and how they start going crazy within their little isolated bubble. Anyways, this movie's horrible. This is awful. Awful movie. I was shocked at how bad it is. I won't say that it's the worst Judd Apatow movie, but it is. It is. It is. I changed my mind. I will say that. It's hard to imagine why they thought this was funny, what redeeming qualities he thought it had. I did laugh a couple times in the first 30 minutes, but after that, my goodwill was spent. And I just kept looking at the time. And when I thought I was 45 minutes into the movie, it had only been 23 minutes. And so,
Sign of any good movie.
I know. And so basically, like all of Judd Apatow's movies, it went on for way too long. Only this movie didn't have any of the serious drama stuff like Funny People and This Is 40 had, or Knocked Up for that matter, to ground it and provide some sort of heart for me to latch onto, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
This was just entirely full on comedy. Every character's ridiculous, but no one's funny. Yeah, it's rough, man. It's I haven't seen a movie that was failing so with flying colors so quickly since Year One. Do you remember that movie Year One?
I was literally going to say that as an example when you were describing movies that spectacularly fail, and my mind immediately went to that movie. But so yes,
yeah,
I do remember it.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what else to say other than I'm disappointed. This is, I think, Judd Apatow exercising his worst tendencies, which is to let actors just improv things and not know when to cut them down or when a joke needs to end.
Yeah, well, the way that you're describing this movie, even down to the sort of pandemic, apocalyptic feel that I'm guessing the movie kind of has, it reminds me of This Is the End, which is a movie I also think is a movie spectacularly failing across the board.
Yeah, I'm not a huge This Is the End fan either, but this is worse than that.
Yeah.
This doesn't even have the absurdity where you're all right, I can kind of see it's funny to have Michael Cera playing a coked out asshole, because that doesn't really seem like Michael's. You know what I mean? Like, there's some funny moments that I feel like redeem parts of This Is the End. I think Danny McBride's pretty funny in it. But, man, I don't know. There's nothing here that works, in my opinion. Like, not one character. It's pretty bad. Another one of Judd Apatow's daughters is in this.
The younger one, right?
Yeah, Iris, I believe.
Yeah.
And she's fine, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Even, like, people that I know are really talented and great are in this, and they're not good, so.
Yeah.
So I kind of think I know the answer to this already, but how much of it not being good has to do with it being about COVID? Is it nothing, or is it because they made it like during COVID? And
it does feel dated. Like,
Yeah.
the conversations they're having are already things we've moved past,
Right.
And like they're talking about, like, if movie theaters ever open again, we'll have, like, this will be played in front of an audience, and like they'll say stuff like that. But I don't know that is actually like the reason it doesn't work. Like, part of it feels like, I don't know, a year too late.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me, just conceptually. And one of the reasons, I didn't watch it, because I thought about watching it last night because I knew you had seen it and might be talking about it. But I just couldn't bring myself to do it, partially for that reason.
Yeah, it's not timely at all. It's like a year too late, considering it doesn't have any like observations that time has like granted it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have any like movie theaters are opening, but we don't know how it's going to be yet, or like it's all just very much like it was written like in like May of 2020, like in the middle of lockdown,
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's coming out far too late. It's far too overconfident in itself. And I don't know, just very shallow. Like, just like, I don't know. Like, it didn't bring anything new to the table or like observations about the pandemic or anything like that about making movies within the pandemic. Like, it didn't bring any like point of view that wasn't something that, like, I don't know, someone who was sitting down to, like, who'd never worked on a movie, sitting down to write a movie about people making a movie during a pandemic, could have done.
Yeah.
I think that there's a good pandemic movie available, but I think really it probably won't be for another 2 or 3 years. Like, when we can look back on it and be like, okay, this is what it was like. This is, we have perspective on it, as opposed to, so
Yeah.
if Hollywood's listening, put a moratorium on like pandemic movies for, just like a couple more years, and then we can, make them as when we have perspective.
Yeah. I mean, to me, is like the way to do this sort of thing is like Don't Look Up, right? Is because that could be about COVID as easily as or the asteroid in Don't Look Up could be COVID, right?
Sure,
right. Instead of like global warming or whatever.
Yeah,
and then it doesn't matter what you're saying, because you're just talking about an asteroid, as opposed to like movie theaters. You're not very specific in what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Movie theater,
Yeah, it's not to say that you have to do that either, because like as you said, Chris, there's a good version of a movie specifically about COVID. It's just like, it's a really hard sell when I was sitting down thinking about watching it last night.
I agree. I think there's a good way to do it. Like, I don't know, the movie could have started out and been like March 2020, and like put you in like that headspace, right? Of like, but they're not very specific on when this takes place. It's just sort of like during the pandemic,
Yeah.
And I don't know, like,
well, the information, it sounds like, that they had and that they've put into the movie is, a year old. So it doesn't, you're like, well, I've already caught up. I'm way past that.
Right. But I don't even want that to like bog everyone down on thinking this is the worst of the movie's sins.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Like, I'm not, I don't want anyone to walk away being like, oh, if they had just tweaked it a little bit, it might have been salvageable. No, that's not the case. Nothing in this is funny.
Right. It sounds like almost like they were like, oh, well, COVID's the hot issue. Like, we'll make a COVID movie and people will just think that that's funny automatically, and it's Judd Apatow.
Right.
So, like, we've got a hit. So what more do we need to do?
We've got all
the check. Let's roll.
Yeah, we've got all the Judd Apatow staples, which is like improv comedy, calling in favors for all my friends. So like every bit role is a cameo.
Yeah.
And like when every bit role is a cameo, you have no characters.
Right.
You have no authentic, genuine characters. You just have like, oh, look, it's like Bill Hader doing a voice or whatever, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's a shame because generally I think I like Judd Apatow more than most. Like I rarely have a problem with the movies being too long because usually I like them and I'm fine with the length.
Yeah, like I said,
I
like it. I like it in the dramedy, like, you know, funny people and This Is 40. Those movies get a bad rap, and I don't think they're very funny, but I find enough of the drama and the heart to, like, have me defending those movies more than the average Joe does, you know?
Yeah. I enjoyed King of Staten Island, too.
I forgot about that one. That one, actually, I enjoyed a lot. That's probably, like, my top 2 Judd Apatow movies.
Yeah.
I didn't see it yet.
Just a quick
sidebar
here. Did either one of you guys see the short-ass movies clip on Saturday Night Live?
Yes, you know we did. You showed it to us in our Slack.
Oh, did I? Oh, well.
Yeah, but the listener doesn't know that, and he's setting it up.
I know.
He's lobbing up a softball for us.
I know.
I really like that moment where they talk about King of Staten Island. He's like, well, no, there's good character moments or whatever.
Yeah, we needed all of those minutes.
We need all that.
Yeah.
I think 2 things really made me like laugh out loud during it, and one was just like the very beginning when he's scrolling and he pulls up Once Upon a Time in America, because of the shot, and you just see it's like runtime 3 hours and 47 minutes, and I was just immediately already laughing. Yeah. And then I just love the like Sex and the City 2 was a movie that was like 2 hours and 37 minutes, and like Jurassic Park was 2 hours and 10 minutes, and that like Sex and the City 2 is about characters we already knew, whereas the other one had to like tell us how we recreate dinosaurs and the history of dinosaurs.
I like how they had the Ernest Goes to Africa, and they're like, yo, this poster makes me nervous.
I was also blown away by how much that actor, is it Simon Rex?
Yeah, looks like fucking Jim. What's his name?
Jim Varney.
Varney, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that blew me away.
I know. I was like, what? What am I looking at? It took me a minute to realize, like, what was happening. Yeah. Anyway, funny stuff.
I see franchise potential with Simon Rex.
Yeah.
And the new
Ernest rides again.
Yeah.
Son of Ernest. Okay, but yeah, great short and not a great movie in the bubble.
Yeah. But you know what? Watch 30 minutes of it, Justin. Let me know, like, if you want to keep going, let me know. Like, tell me there's something I'm missing here, because I think if anyone's on this podcast is going to like it, it's you.
Yeah, I feel that way too. Like, I am curious.
Yeah, like, it can't be as bad as I'm saying, right?
You know, I've heard from a lot of different places that it's bad, and that's when you talked about it. I was like, well, I could watch it, and then everything I've heard, I haven't heard a single positive thing about it. So I was like, well, good for you, Mike, for watching it, but I don't think I'm going to join.
If it were like 90 minutes, that would be something, right? But it is over 2 hours.
You can watch anything for 90 minutes.
Yeah. All right,
maybe. But yeah, okay. I think that's it, right? Anything else?
Yeah, I think that'll do it for me. I think we should move on into something that I think, Justin, you just recently caught up on and ties into today's main event.
Yeah, that's right. I got out of the theater watching Everything Everywhere All at Once, which we're going to talk about later, and you know, not to give away too much of how I felt about that movie, but I thought, well, maybe I should check out Swiss Army Man, because I skipped it initially because it felt a little bit like a movie that was like weird for weird's sake.
Gimmicky.
A novelty,
gimmicky,
if you will.
Yeah. And just maybe that's what the movie had, was like, let's just sell ourselves on the weirdest idea that we have, you know, like that's what's going to get people in the seats. And it doesn't matter beyond that what we put into it, right? Like we've done our job with, you know, 2 mainstream actors doing something really bizarre. And I think that was a bit of an unfair judgment on my part after, or at least I thought it could be after Everything Everywhere All at Once. And so, I watched it, and I said that was Swiss Army Man, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I watched Swiss Army Man, and because I also saw that it was like 90-something minutes, and I was like, that's totally doable and digestible no matter how bad it is. And turns out it's actually pretty good. I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. I thought it had a lot more heart than I expected it to. It had some really moving moments, some really wonderful visuals, some really creative creative stuff. I think that it's not quite the like home run that other Daniels movies may or may not be, but it was really enjoyable, and I thought it was really kind of sweet at points, but also just overall pretty funny and just clever. You guys have seen this movie, right? I think.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I don't. Do you have anything to add? What were your thoughts on it?
Chris, you want to go first?
Yeah.
Sure.
Chris.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I thought, like it got a whole star like bump because of the use of the Jurassic Park theme music.
Yeah. Right.
Was pretty amazing. I think in both of these movies, they are throwing a lot of stuff at the wall and like seeing what sticks and stuff like that. And, there's an emotional core to the story that really kind of makes the movie work. And even in it's not both the Daniels, but one Daniel did a movie called The Death of Dick Long that also has some like kind of crazy elements to it, but there's like a core, like emotional thing to it. And it makes the movie work, and it doesn't kind of matter where the movie goes. It just works because there's this emotional truth to it, I think. And I think that they're really good in all three of those movies, one of them not being both Daniels, but they're really good at putting that in there and making it work. So, yeah, I enjoyed Swiss Army Man. It's crazy and weird.
Yeah, Mike?
Yeah, no, I'm right there as well. I'm like you. When it came out, I didn't see it right away. I kind of saw it a few months after everyone was talking about it in theaters. And I remember having like the same thought and being like, I don't know, this looks kind of one note. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And it ended up being more than I thought it would. It had a lot of heart to it. That said, I didn't love it. I didn't come away from that movie wanting to see it again. I still feel satisfied with it. And I wasn't necessarily coming away being like, this directing pair calling themselves Daniels, these are the guys that I am looking out for in the future, So
Sure, yeah.
When Everything Everywhere All at Once came out, I was, I had my reservations. And we'll get into how I feel about the movie here a little bit, but like, I thought Swiss Army Man was good, not great. And I still think it's good. It's not even like, it's not even okay or pretty good. It's good.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think, a lot of these things apply to both movies, but there's so much like craziness in both of these movies that it keeps, it keeps you interested and, and that emotional core maybe works better in one movie than the other.
Yeah. I think if anything, maybe this movie ended up being a little bit too short because I found myself, really kind of intrigued by some of the stuff that was going on between the Paul Dano character and the Mary Elizabeth Winstead character and kind of how that ends up playing out between the two, and I felt like that didn't get like a resolve for me, and I wanted more of like, what's the fallout of this, or like, does it matter, or what am I supposed to pull away from this? Because like, it felt really important, like that her reaction is not necessarily not what you'd expect, because it's actually like kind of is what you would expect to happen, but maybe not what you would have like expected from the movie, if that makes sense. Trying to be vague.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years since I've seen it, so.
Well, like, he doesn't know her, right? And he has a picture of her on his phone that the Daniel Radcliffe character falls in love with, basically, right?
Yeah, okay.
And then spoiler alert, I guess, for Swiss Army Man. Don't listen anymore if you haven't seen it. But he guides them to her house. So whenever he shows up and there's this corpse and they call the cops are like, oh, look at his phone. And he has a picture of her, but she obviously doesn't know him. And so she's really like weirded out and creeped out by it. Mm-hmm. And then from there, not a lot is done with that piece of the story. And it kind of fell off in an unsatisfying way to me.
Yeah, I would agree there. I kind of felt the same way. There wasn't a climax as what I was expecting. And maybe if I watched it a second time, I would
Well, it's like the end is
better.
the whole climax of the movie. There's no like come down from the climax. It's just like climax and then it ends, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Not a resolution, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, but there's like a final scene with them on the beach where they kind of set off, let like Daniel Radcliffe's corpse like propel itself out into the ocean. And everybody realizes that Paul Dano wasn't crazy, I guess. But still, I needed more from other stuff maybe to feel a little bit more like complete.
Sure.
But, oh well.
Yeah. All right. End of spoilers for Swiss Army Man.
yeah. But a good movie, and certainly one that I would use as an example of why Daniels are people to like keep an eye out for, because they do some interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely a movie where you're like, I mean, did you see the movie about the farting corpse and like the different places that it goes? You're like, I can't believe that they went to these places. You know, like it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
So even if it doesn't pay off in the end, it's worth it to have watched it.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's it for me for Swiss Army Man. So moving on to the last thing we have on News on the March.
Yeah, so this is something that I can't super participate in because I've only seen one episode of it, but you guys have just finished the season 1 of Severance. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So why don't you guys get it kicked off? Chris, you're the one who's been really championing, I can't even say the word right now.
I'm sure the Mike from
Justin.
my dimension would have gotten it right.
No.
No.
It was hard. It was hard back in that dimension too, whenever I did this originally.
Okay. Severance is a really interesting show. Like I started off watching it and I thought I was getting one thing, and then like slowly throughout the season, because, you know, I watched it week to week, it was slowly revealed that this is something completely different than what I was expecting. And I liked it more for it, even maybe. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. This is a pretty great show. It's like directed really well. The last episode especially is like directed like in such a way that gives it suspense, and, you know, like the whole like episode you're just like, what's gonna happen next, and you're on the edge of your seat, and there's like transitions and different ways that they shoot different from the rest of the season that like just gives it this special feeling and like this weird propelling forward feeling. Anyways, I really enjoyed it. I'm interested in hearing like what you think of the first episode, and then like Justin also had a different experience than me. Like Justin actually, I would say, binged this show, at least for Justin. You know, like he watched like the whole first season in like a week. I think that for Justin, that's binging. So I'm interested in both of you guys' experience with this show, since I watched it week to week, you know, like, and Mike's only on the first episode. But so Justin, what did you think with the binging model, and like how did you feel about it? And I mean, you must have liked it if you kept going. So tell me about your experience.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I liked it because I watched it all that quick. I mean, part of that is my wife, who was really into it, and we had a couple of moments. It's that type of show where when one episode ends, if you don't have the willpower to not binge something, you're like, let's go. I need to see what comes next, you know? Mm-hmm. So that's part of the reason I binged it, was because my wife insisted. She was like, well, we're not stopping here, you know? And, but that's not like to say that I didn't enjoy it or didn't want to keep watching or wasn't happy to keep watching, you know? Sure. So yeah, I think it's good. I think, you know, I really enjoy the fact that like, while it is sort of a mystery show, they're also putting in a lot of humor, a lot of really funny things. Sure. So like I found myself laughing more than I thought I would At least so once I knew what the show was about, because initially I thought the show was going to be more of a comedy, just not knowing anything about it, just seeing the poster. Mm-hmm. And maybe a bit more like Office Space, you know?
Okay.
And it's obviously not that. But I still laughed quite a bit and found it to be funny. And I think one of my favorite things about the show, like existing as a whole, and maybe kind of a good overall thing to say about the show, is that I've pitched this to a couple people of like, oh, you should check out the show. This is what it's about. And even after watching like the first episode and kind of like realizing what it's about, my wife felt this way too. But everyone that I've talked to about the show, or when they hear the concept and during the first episode, they're like, this actually seems kind of cool. Like, I would love to like check out whenever I go to work and not have to like deal with it. And then as you go on, you start to realize the gray area and how that could not be so great, right? Maybe isn't like the paradise it sounds like when you just hear the concept of the show, right?
Sure.
And I don't know. To me, that's like the journey of the show in some ways, and then just it's really fun to like tell people about that and watch them think it's really great. But having seen the whole show, you're like, okay, sure, think that. But yeah, really enjoyed it. Can't wait for the next season because it's renewed for season 2. I'll leave it there because obviously one of us has only seen one episode. But Mike, you've seen one episode. What are your thoughts so far? Got any predictions?
No, I don't really have too many predictions. I can say that when it was over, I was intrigued. I would keep going, but I'm watching it with somebody, so I kind of have to wait. So it's not like I only watched one episode and then just didn't feel like proceeding. I do like the show.
Sure.
Yeah.
I will say that some of the dialogue, like the exposition, a little clunky, or not really clunky, but like pretty on the nose. Like there's a conversation in the first episode about it's part of the plot, so I don't know, like the severance procedure, you know? Mm-hmm. And that's I guess we'll just go ahead and just reiterate real quick for the listeners who don't have any idea what the show's about, but basically like you're conscious between going from work to like at home mode is like separated, it's severed, and they're like two different people essentially with different memories. And basically, like there's one scene where they're sitting around the table and they're talking about it, and like one character's like, well, so-and-so here had the procedure done, despite in fact being it's like kind of controversial scientifically and morally, and all the characters around are like, you know, and then I don't know, like that was kind of not a very, I don't know, it just kind of felt a little heavy-handed, I guess.
Is that with the sister and brother-in-law?
Yeah, he goes to like his sister's house for dinner, and like the brother-in-law is like, I don't know, some of the dialogue there felt a little.
I will say that's
we have to hook you at the beginning, so you know what's going on.
Yeah, my nitpick with the show is that the brother-in-law, although they use him to great effect in some places, but he kind of doesn't fit. Like, I'm not sure why the sister's with the brother-in-law.
I certainly didn't understand from just like this guy's annoying perspective whenever I was watching it.
That's probably my biggest nitpick, but I don't think it's...
Yeah, I think I'm at a point of the show where I assume that or I guess I have enough faith that the things that seem out of place or weird or off like that are that way for a purpose, because it feels like, especially something like that, where it feels like the one thing that maybe isn't working or whatever, it's like doesn't make sense for that one to slip through the cracks. You know, it's like you can't criticize like the architecture of the hotel in The Shining for not making sense when it's Stanley Kubrick, right? Except, of course, Ben Stiller and the people making the show aren't Stanley Kubrick. That's not necessarily my point either.
No, yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, there might be a scene that reveals why they're together, and it, makes sense. But for right now, I'm like, I don't know why this is happening.
Sure, it's just based on the first episode. all I can say is like that dialogue felt like it was for the audience benefit and
Sure.
Oh yeah.
and not necessarily something that like your family member would say to you. Because like he's like, despite the medical and moral like and ethical like up in the air about the whole severance procedure, and then it's like, oh, well, I think that's something that he would have wanted to say for himself, and everyone's like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, and it's just like, I don't know. This is
Yeah. There's dialogue like that. I think I would say that that's mostly in the first episode too.
Sure, and, it's got to build the mystery. I get it.
It's doing the heavy lifting too,
Right.
Yeah.
And just to kind of like wrap up, I love the first season. I think it's a great first season of television. However, I'm a little bit worried about where we go in the second season. Like any kind of mystery show, like they could focus too heavily on one thing that I'm not necessarily interested in, or it's kind of like there's like two good examples of this. Like I think Westworld had a great first season and then kind of fell off as we moved along, and then there are other shows like I think Lost for me, like people will argue, but Lost kept building on it and like focused on other things and character as opposed to just the mystery. Like, anyways, so I'm a little worried about where we go next. Dan Erickson is the guy that like wrote the scripts, and he had like a plan. So him and Ben Stiller, I think, are like co-show running, something along those lines. And so they have like a 3 to 5 season plan. So I'm satisfied with that. Like right now they're like, we know where we're going. So hopefully, I think we talked about this last week, but I don't want that that obvious, like, let's keep this from the audience. And it's so obvious that they didn't lost a lot, So anyways, that's kind of my worry about the show.
I mean, I think that's fair. I worry about that anytime a show presents like ongoing mysteries, and that's like going to be the format of the show, is like part of the key to enjoying the show is to be wondering about the mystery, because I feel like where Lost cheated, in my opinion, was they relied so heavily on like the absurdity of each twist and turn. Like, how did a polar bear get here? What is a smoke monster? What are the others, And then eventually it just kind of became like, well, the show's not really about those questions. It's more about the characters, and it's more about like their connections to one another. And it's like, yeah, but it wasn't like that for whenever I got hooked,
Yeah, that's
it
not
became
what
like
hooked
that
me,
whenever you had to force the show to be 6 seasons or whatever,
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
or like
the mysteries
after 6
still matter to me,
Yeah. After 6 seasons, we are attached enough to the characters. We're like, that's fine, because I do like all these characters.
Right.
But that's not what I was sold. Yeah.
I do think this show though has like a really good excuse for keeping information from different characters, because there's literally, split personalities. They have different memories. So like the same character can know 2 different things, or, one character can know one thing and then the other one doesn't know it. Anyways.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to keep going. Hopefully I can catch up within a week. There's how many episodes are there in season 1? 9? 9. That's only 8 more to go.
I think they get progressively shorter too, because I remember the first one being like an hour, and one of the reasons I got through it so quickly was because later on we watched an episode and it seemed over very quickly, and I checked and it was around 40 minutes or so, maybe a little under 40 minutes.
Yeah,
one of the episodes, and I was like, oh wow, look at this.
The wacky model of streaming.
Be whatever length you need to be, which is kind of nice. It's
kind of, yeah. Usually, I would say.
Yeah, but even like the finale, I was expecting an hour or maybe a little more or something, because it like had a lot to go through, and that one's like 40 something minutes.
Yeah, it's almost
like,
filmed
great.
in real time.
Right. Yeah.
Well, cool.
All right.
I'm glad you liked it, Justin. I'm really happy about that, and I'm excited to hear what Mike has to think in the future.
Me too.
Same.
All right, so that's Severance Season 1, and now I think it's time for the main event. What say you, gentlemen?
Absolutely.
All right. Now moving into the feature review for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
What's happening?
Evelyn, I'm not your husband. I'm another version of him from another universe. I'm here because we need your help.
Very busy today. No time to help you.
Across the multiverse, I've seen thousands of Evelyns. You can access all of their memories, their emotions, even their skills. There's a great evil spreading throughout the many verses. And you may be our only chance of stopping it.
Don't make me fight you. I am really good.
I don't believe you.
Wow, that was really good.
All right, so as always with our newer films, we will be doing a spoiler-free section up front where we'll give our general thoughts about the movie without giving anything away other than maybe what's in the trailer or the tagline plot synopsis of the movie. So if you have not seen Everything Everywhere All at Once yet, you can keep listening. We will give you a warning, play a spoiler bumper so that you have plenty of time to pause the podcast, go watch the movie, come back, and finish listening.
That's right. So Everything, Everywhere, All at Once was directed by the team known as Daniels, which is Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert.
Scheinert, yeah.
Yeah. All right. It stars Michelle Yeoh, Stephanie Hsu?
Sue? I don't know.
A shoe, I think.
Okay.
Sue.
And then Ke Huy Quan. The IMDb synopsis says an aging Chinese immigrant is swept up in an insane adventure where she alone can save the world by exploring other universes, connecting with the lives she could have led.
Beautifully said. I struggled much harder than that describing it to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. A succinct and well-constructed synopsis, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this movie is all the rage right now.
Yep.
Yep. And who wants to get us started? Justin, you saw it the most recently. And I know...
By a matter of hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sure.
But, I know you've been wanting to talk about it, so...
That's true. And despite this movie being all the rage, I know zero people, I think... Well, no, maybe one other person other than you two who has seen it. And we kind of intentionally don't really have a lot of conversation about things until we're on the show, just so it's fresh. So I've been kind of bottling this one up on the inside.
Yeah.
Well, let it out.
Well,
Uncork
now you
that
no
bottle.
longer have to. You can let it out everywhere all at once. Everything in that bottle.
Yay. Okay, great. Well, based on earlier talking about how this inspired me to give Swiss Army Man a chance, I think it's probably not that much of a secret that I enjoyed this movie. And I will expand upon that and say that I really, really love this movie. I thought it was fantastic. It's, one of the few times every year that I get where I just walk out of the movie feeling like that was everything I wanted it to be and more, and really surprised me and kept me entertained and made me feel a lot of different things. I think it's really wonderful. The cast is all great. It's obviously a wacky story that's just full of bizarre ideas and things. And, I much like Swiss Army Man, I was a little worried that might be all the movie was just these bizarre other universes that are just weird and maybe weird for weird's sake. And I, especially with this movie, I don't think I could have been any more wrong about that.
Yeah. This movie, it could easily go the other direction if not executed just right.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And I think, that's the biggest praise I give the movie is that it somehow includes all of this wacky, bizarre stuff, but yet has great action. It has great comedy. It has great drama. In a movie that doesn't necessarily need it in some way, you could say, or need it to be a movie that is still good. And it has all of those things and elevates it to a movie that, in my opinion, is great, right? They could have had just a silly action movie, kung fu, sort of romp, and that would have been probably entertaining. But
it would have been okay, yeah.
Yeah, it was, to me, it's so much more than that, and about so much more to, and I don't want to dig in too much, at least from my perspective, in the general thoughts, because I think just the less of anything you know about the movie, the better, really. And anything beyond that might like set up expectations that I think it's better to be surprised by. But the last thing that I'll say about the movie in my general thoughts is that there's a pattern. I was thinking back on like some of my favorite movies from the years that they came out. Little Women and Eighth Grade were both my favorite movies of their respective years. And when I saw those movies, I was surprised by how much they moved me. I cried while watching it in theater. I left the theater, like, couldn't stop thinking about it, and then like had to go home and try to convince my wife to come back so I could see it a second time.
Yeah.
And I don't do that. I don't really go see a lot of movies twice in theaters anymore these days. And so like this movie has checked all of those boxes. So like I could very well have just seen like my favorite movie of 2022, based on history and like the things that have happened. Like it's checking all the boxes.
Sure.
Obviously very early, so we'll see. But I'm just over the moon about it, and I don't want to talk too long or too much until we get further in the conversation and maybe into spoilers, just because I don't want to give anything away. So I'll pass it off to Mike. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, like I said the first time we recorded this.
Damn it! You genuinely confused me for like a split second.
Yeah,
me too.
It's a callback to earlier in the episode.
Yeah.
I hope you didn't skip just straight to the
It's
review.
an ongoing bit, you see.
That was brilliant. Good job.
Anyways, what else can I say about this movie? I saw the trailer for it a couple months back whenever it released, and I thought to myself, finally, all right, a movie starring Michelle Yeoh,
Yeah.
Right.
whom I have had a massive crush on since Super Cop.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, she's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just, she pops up like, I don't know, once every like 5 or 6 years, it seems like, to do something kind of cool, usually in a supporting role. And then she kind of disappears for a little bit,
Yes.
And I think what sold me on this movie, because, the multiverse is so hot right now, right? We have Spider-Verse and Doctor Strange and Spider-Man and all, the idea of the Rick and Morty. It's like, this isn't new anymore. This is pretty common now. I think we all understand the concept of the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
So, when this movie came out, I guess what seemed so refreshing about it was it wasn't attached to any sort of IP. Right?
Yeah.
It was an original thing about the multiverse, and that was intriguing to me. Starring Michelle Yeoh, she gets to do something cool. And that woman's so talented and funny and just good that it's so nice to see her in this role, because she rises to the occasion. She makes me feel something, like she made me choke up. She made me laugh. The woman she can do everything. And this movie is a perfect vehicle for her to get to showcase that. Jamie Lee Curtis is in this, being hilarious and just not caring. And I got to say, I'm here for that. I love Jamie Lee Curtis's not giving a crap attitude.
Yeah. Like in the movie, or about like...
Well, just
about,
the way she's
role.
filmed in this movie, it's like, it's not the most flattering, and she just rocks it.
Yeah, she's not like concerned clearly with making sure she comes off like looking good,
Right?
in
Yeah,
a conventional
like
sense.
she just, I don't know, she just leans into this in like the really like in a really fun way,
Yeah, I agree.
And I gotta say, the return of Ke Huy Quan, whom we all know as Short Round from Temple of Doom, and of course, what's his name in Goonies? Data? With the
Beta
Pinterest apparel?
yeah, I think Beta sounds right, but I never really knew that.
Data, I
character's name.
thought. Not Beta.
Data. Oh,
Yeah,
Data.
Data.
Yeah.
Anyways, he's back and just as charming as he was when he was a little boy. He hasn't lost a beat. He's still just like infinitely watchable and likable and funny. And the actress who plays the daughter, is that Stephanie Hsu?
Yeah.
She's great. She's so good. At first I was like, how's this girl gonna, measure up going facing off against Michelle Yeoh? But she does. She's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Just
She's fantastic.
Yeah, the cast is great. The humor, it doesn't always work for me. Like, there's a couple moments where I'm like, I don't know, that's a little bit much. But the audience I was with laughed at everything. It worked for everything. See, you know what? I let that kind of stuff go, and it's just a fun, great ride with just some twists and turns that are just so absurd that you can't help but laugh and just be charmed by it. And there's a bit with a raccoon that I'm sure we'll get into later that just like, it's so bizarre and stupid. And you're just like, all right, that's awesome. There's homages to Wong Kar-wai and other filmmakers in this movie that are really subtle and cool. It's very rewarding if you're a movie nerd, and it's extremely rewarding even if you're not, I think it's a great, and I hope Michelle Yeoh gets remembered come Oscar time, but I fear this is too early in the year for that.
Yeah, sadly, but I'm with you.
Yeah. Anyway, Chris, what say you?
Much like you guys, I really enjoyed this film. I think the most remarkable thing about this film is that it literally is everything, everywhere, all at once, and it like has an emotional impact, like we kind of talked about earlier about the Swiss Army Man and stuff like that. Like almost every 5 minutes, I had to pick my jaw up off the floor because I was so surprised by something that was happening. It's like they're constantly throwing stuff, and it doesn't distract from what the point they're trying to get across, right? Like, there's just a million ideas in this movie, and it still is focused, and which is crazy to me, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that they can do so much and still remain focused, and have that emotional, and have it all add up to something more than the sum of its parts,
Sure.
It is really, really great.
I would argue that if they didn't nail the third act, the movie would only just be okay,
Sure, it'd be a bunch of great ideas kind of mixed together. And, honestly, I have a friend, a couple of friends that it didn't work for. And I kind of can understand that, because maybe it's just, if that emotional, through line doesn't work for you, or the other parts are distracting, then I get it. I can understand that. But it wasn't that way for me. For me, it kind of all added up into something bigger than the sum of its parts. And so,
yeah. Well, even beyond that, the movie takes so many big swings that I feel like you could be lost by something that happens earlier in the movie, so that by the time you get to things that happen later in the film, you're already out, whether or not
sure
it works for you. It could still work for you, but then but you're like, well, maybe it's not, this isn't following up a good movie. And this is, I'm checked out, so I'm not in with it. So this feels abrupt to me or unfocused. I could see that happening.
Yeah, well, I think it may be I don't want to say it's a completely generational thing, because everyone has different tastes, but did you see Paul Schrader's Facebook post about it?
Uh-oh.
I did not.
The director, Paul Schrader?
I did not.
It was actually sums up a little bit, I think, what Chris was hinting at with some of his friends. Let me see if I can. He says, everything is everywhere. Saw this afternoon after receiving several recommendations. It's ingenious, impressive, and occasionally moving, but I appreciated it more than I enjoyed it. I think you need to have grown up in a fractured media society to feel at home with it. In other words, it made me feel old as time itself.
Okay. Yeah, I do remember reading that now. Yeah.
The friend that didn't like it is actually 23, so very different than Paul Schrader. But yeah, I get I think that he feels the same way as Paul Schrader in that way. And I kind of don't, when I walked out of the theater, I was like, wait, what was am I just overwhelmed by everything that happened in this movie, or was it actually good? Does it all add up? And I think I've come to the conclusion I'm excited about a second viewing, as I am with most movies I enjoy. But I think I came away that it adds up to more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah,
so
I agree with that, but I don't think I would have much of an argument against somebody that said, this movie's all over the place and doesn't pick a lane or something like that. And I'd be like, well, I mean, yes, that's kind of the point, but you're not wrong.
Yeah. Well, and I think the Daniels, all three of those, their movies, and it's only two of them directed by the Daniels and one by themselves, but like essentially are like the pitches of those movies are crazy. A farting corpse, like a murder mystery with a horse in it, and I don't, so you kind of have to buy into the premise, or it has to do a lot of work to win you over once you get to that premise, and I think that they do a really great job in all three of the movies, really.
Yeah. I wonder if this movie had come out like 10 years ago, like in a pre-Marvel multiverse world or like a pre-Rick and Morty multiverse world. You know what I mean? Like, I think now the idea and the concept of a multiverse is pretty easy to grasp for most people. Yeah. I wonder how much of this movie's success is kind of due to the idea of the multiverse being kind of more like in mainstream pop culture than it was, 10 years ago or whatever, right?
Yeah. I listened to an interview with the Daniels, and they mentioned that they're like, the multiverse was happening, and that's how the movie got made, because they could kind of see the writing on the wall. The people understood what a multiverse was, and I think they'd even like talked about using time travel instead of like a multiverse thing at some point, which doesn't necessarily make as much sense. But anyways, that would be a much different movie. But yes, I think you're right. There is like a time and culture, like there was something else that we talked about where it came out. But anyways, a time and culture where it's the right time, like we understand it, we get it, and
it's not old yet.
Yeah. And it's a new take on it, really.
Do you think that if this movie came out 10 years ago, it would be compared too much to The Matrix?
I think it's.
I've seen it compared a lot to The Matrix now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess it feels very original, which it is regardless. But do you think it would maybe be less like impactful? Like, are we far enough removed from The Matrix that like those comparisons are a little bit more academic than like talking about it as though it's just another like bank on the popularity of The Matrix?
I don't know. I don't think you're wrong, but I think there's enough like references to all the other films that are in this movie. I don't think it's a ripoff of The Matrix. I was just posing the thought experiment of like, are we far enough removed from The Matrix that like, is it better served being this far removed from The Matrix though? I think it's more better served that it's all the multiverse stuff is happening in culture.
Probably fair.
So.
Yeah. Well, any other thoughts, Chris? So we might have derailed you in the middle of your general thoughts, but
no. I think that kind of wraps it up. It's really hard to talk about anything specific or anything about this movie. I want to echo a lot of what you guys said. Jamie Lee Curtis is really great in this, and like willing to go there.
I think she said that was all her body too. That there was no like prosthetic. She was like, it was awesome to just let it be my body and let it be what it is, and not.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Have to do what I've been doing for, I guess, decades now.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
Pretty great. The other thing, actually, that's really cool, and they like just hired a bunch of people from like YouTube. They followed on YouTube to do the choreography and stuff. This is crazy. They didn't. This movie looks like it was so expensive, but it really it wasn't. So that's another thing that like Marvel could take a hint from. Like, let's do these things.
I will say, if I did have to like peg one complaint down, I will say that some of the fight choreography is not very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not a huge complaint because like everything else is just so like firing on all cylinders here. But the movie's not perfect.
Sure.
Yeah,
there's so much going on in it.
Yeah, I don't know that I was like, if I were to look at the choreography and fight scenes in a vacuum without the context of the rest of the movie, that I would find like anything revolutionary or exceptional. But in the context of everything, with it being like an older woman doing all of this, like,
Well, no, she's great. It's just I think the choreography itself. Like the little bit of like the fanny pack fight scene.
Man, I like the fanny pack.
I like it
fight
too.
scene
It's
quite a
just
bit.
like you could see it not always connecting with people and people
right.
falling down for like hits that wouldn't really knock you down.
Gotcha.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, I see.
yeah.
I see. Yeah, fair enough.
Did you know what is his name? The guy that did the fanny pack fight scene?
Ke Huy Quan?
Ke Huy Quan. He was an assistant director for Wong Kar-wai on some of his movies, which is crazy to me.
Wait, like the actor who played Short Round in Indiana Jones?
Yeah, so he couldn't get any roles in America, that weren't fairly offensive, I suppose, and so he went to Hong Kong and did that.
He has an IMDb credit as additional crew on X-Men, the first X-Men movie.
Interesting.
Just additional crew.
Well, I like that because there is one section that is very Wong Kar-wai inspired in this movie, which we could talk more about in spoilers. But
yeah, let's get to spoilers.
Yeah, let's do that.
You guys have anything else?
Yeah, the less you know about this movie, the better. Honestly, like I don't think the trailer gives away too much or anything like that, but I think like if you're sold this movie, just go see it. You don't want to know anymore.
Yeah,
Sure.
I agree with that. It's worth it. It's good, and yeah, a lot of fun.
Bring a broom and a dustpan so you can sweep your jaw up off the floor.
Yeah,
They should put that on the poster.
Yeah,
cool. All right, well, spoilers then.
Yes.
let's do it.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
How many cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
Okay, so now that we are in spoilers, I wanted to see if you guys caught this. The whole reality where she's like the famous actress, and she leaves the theater, and then she's talking to her husband that, in all the other lifetimes, most of them she seems to marry, but in this one she chose not to run away with him.
Yeah, they're not together.
Yeah, that whole section in the alleyway where like the background had that really choppy slow motion
Yeah.
that Wong Kar-wai is known for. Did you guys notice that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's difficult not to. I think if you're familiar at all. With him.
With Wong Kar-wai.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, did you guys immediately just be like, "Yep, Wong Kar-wai"?
Yeah, well, so I think there was a moment of that choppy slow motion that immediately I was like, okay, they're influenced a little bit by Wong Kar-wai here using that slow motion. And then as it went on, he looks like Tony Leung and In the Mood for Love, like with the suit and the slick down hair and stuff. And then when they're in the alley, it's like a combo of like the composition, and then there was the green light, and it's like that green light when that was in there, I was like, okay, so this is directly what we're doing here. Like,
That section for sure is the most Wong Kar-wai, and it's beautiful.
It's very Chungking Express in this aesthetic.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I got that, which I think is maybe a little bit more poignant than just, check out our influence and she's a movie actress or whatever, just because, well, my mind went to In the Mood for Love, I guess, more than Chungking Express, which is kind of this people who long for each other and think about each other, but aren't together.
Yeah, I think the
separated.
aesthetic is more Chungking, but maybe the content is maybe a little bit more In the Mood for Love.
Yeah. So it kind of worked on more than just a visual reference level, which I enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Made it feel a little less like extraneous or superfluous.
Sure. Well, and I also think the aesthetic is really the most of the homage. So it's like either you get it if you've seen Wong Kar-wai movies, or you haven't, and it's fine. You just kind of move on.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, you're just treated to some very nice compositions, like
and choppy slow motion.
Yeah, I think this is kind of like exceptionally nice composition compared to the rest of the movie, which is not like poorly shot by any means. It's just like when you start imitating Wong Kar-wai, you're stepping up your composition game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like how they presented those universes, the different universes, and then just kind of followed through and kind of kept going with them. I kind of thought I would just get a little bit of each one, but even with the Wong Kar-wai, it's presented, we get this choppy slow motion, and then it just kind of builds into something unique in itself. At first I thought it was just like a meta commentary on like Michelle Yeoh's own career, because they have like real footage of Crazy Rich Asians in there and stuff like that. So I thought that like, it was just commenting on that, but it like builds into something special. Like I think the best example of that is the Raccoony joke. Raccoonie, yeah. Because it's just a joke. And then there's like another part, and it's like, okay, well, we followed through. We got another punchline to that joke. And then they just like, they really are ballsy, because they keep going with it. And like to a point where like it could be, like, okay. But every time we revisited Raccoonie, it was amazing. And the same thing with the In the Mood for Love, or the hot dog finger hand world, or I mean, I think my favorite is the rock world. And
I'm probably with you on that. Just like the scenes and the way that they handle certain conversations via the rock scene, where it's just text. Like,
yeah,
I kind of think they take advantage of that to get some dialogue out that could be clunkier, I guess, if spoken by a human.
And maybe it was a little bit more emotional because they were rocks. I don't know.
Well, it's because it's silence, right? Like, it's just silence and you're reading it. Mm-hmm. And the whole movie is like, at this point, whenever you start getting into like the rock universe, the movie's taking you on a pretty wacky ride up to that point, right? And it's like, It's noisy, it's flashy, there's a lot going on, it's chaotic. And then, they'll break down and they'll give you like 3 minutes of like silence with like nothing but wind of like two rocks talking to each other, right? And it's like a nice respite, and it's impactful because it's quiet. It's like the only thing in the movie at this point that's like this quiet and calm.
Yeah. I just using all of those things together. I mean, the way they get into the other universes is pretty interesting too. They have to do something that's like what is it?
Something that doesn't make any sense.
It's random.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense or isn't accepted.
Completely unexpected, so that it creates, or I guess allows you to access that path that doing something that crazy would create, like an alternate timeline.
Sure. There's just so much in this movie, like the anal butt plugs fight sequence, like it's just what? And then how can I, in a movie where two guys are fighting with, like butt plugs up their ass, like, can I still feel like an emotional punch? Like, it's just, I don't understand how this movie works. And it's,
well, the thing is though, like, because it goes further than you think it will, right? Because like, if it had just stopped at that, it wouldn't work, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's
like,
defies your expectations in more ways than just like, see how crazy this thing is? I bet you didn't expect anything that crazy.
It earns it to a degree, right? Like if the third act, that's what I was trying to allude to earlier. If the third act hadn't worked, things like the butt plug fight scene would have felt stupid, in my opinion. Like, because it's not really laugh out loud funny, in my opinion, when it's happening. It's just like, by the end of the movie, you're so overwhelmed by the wackiness of everything that you're like, all right, they really tied everything together in a way that like, at least in my opinion, I didn't think the butt plug thing was that funny, but like,
no, but that's a moment where I had to pick up my jaw off the floor. I'm like, oh,
yeah, exactly.
They did this.
It's just like my eyebrows were raised, but like I wasn't like laughing out loud. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they really make it work. Like the hot dog finger universe, like you said earlier, I think that works because like Michelle Yeoh's character throughout the movie, she gets mad that universe exists. Like she comments multiple times that it's a stupid universe.
It is.
Yeah, and it's like that part's great to me. Like the part at the end whenever she like starts using her feet and she's like, even in a stupid universe where like we have hot dogs for fingers, we get pretty good at using our feet, and like her dialogue and like just how good and funny and comedic she can be about like it's a stupid universe. Like it is a stupid universe, but like, and hot dogs on your fingers is a completely idiotic joke. But she sells it, and they just don't drop it. Like the Raccoonie thing, they just don't drop it. Like even if the joke doesn't work for you, well, it's part of the ongoing climax. Now we're going to keep going back to it.
Yeah, Yeah. They always find a way to make it feel less random, which I think, was the worry for me seeing the trailer for this movie, was that like, is that what this movie is going to be? Is just random, and how random and like crazy and off the wall we could be. And I even had that worry early on in the movie whenever, I think it's when we first are kind of learning how the universe jumping works, and the husband, Waymond, he just starts eating that chapstick.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? What is happening? And it's like, I think I worried about that too. Then I was like, oh, is that like, this is just going to be random. Yeah. And I'm so glad that it feels so much more complete. And just while we're on the point of like doing the random things to jump universes, all I could think about was this conversation, Mike, that you and I had. I think we had it a couple times throughout college. I don't know if you remember this, but you're like, do you ever think about what would happen if you were to just like your friend was just sitting there on the couch and you were just like running the couch and like punch them in the face for no reason, or like pee on them for no reason.
Right. Yeah. Just do something completely off the wall.
Or anything like that. It was like, if you just unexpectedly did something that made no sense and no one would see coming, you did it for no reason. Well, I think you have your answer.
Yeah. I would create another universe. That's what the answer is.
Yeah, exactly. There'd be like a whole divergent life path from there.
From there on out.
Yeah. Because you might not have a friend anymore.
That's true.
Yeah.
Anyways, I thought about that a lot during this movie, which is weird, but funny.
Yeah. So let me ask you guys, what was your favorite universe? What's a universe that you wish we could have spent more time in this movie?
Chris?
I think there's two answers. My favorite, like, I don't necessarily want to spend more time there, but the Raccacoonie joke, just because I kept going back to it, because it's, it's just Raccacoonie. No, it was Ratatouille, Mom. And then it was a whole nother universe, and then she like reveals that the raccoon is in his hat, and then there's a whole arc for that, that universe, and it's amazing. But I think the one I'd want to spend more time in is the Wong Kar-wai one. I'd like to let's watch a whole movie of that. Of course, you could just watch a Wong Kar-wai film.
That's true. You can live in that universe.
Yeah.
I think I just loved everything that came out of the hot dog fingers, to be honest. And maybe it's because that was the part of the trailer that most made me think that this is just going to be wacky for wacky's sake. And the fact that it built up to so much more. And just thinking about the, implications in the way that life could have evolved where Michelle Yeoh and Jamie Lee Curtis's characters would have been together.
Yeah.
Like...
What was it about hot dog hands that got them together that they couldn't get together in other universes, right?
Right, exactly. And I also love that they kind of reprise, when she plays the piano with her feet, reprise Claire de Lune, because they use that music in some of the fight sequences earlier. And I think it's the fight sequences between her and Jamie Lee Curtis. There's Claire de Lune as kind of part of the fight music.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah, and then obviously she plays it again, and I just thought it was kind of beautiful. It's just like a really beautiful song altogether. But which I don't get if you guys don't know, I don't remember specifically, but do you remember Hulu used to have the Criterion Collection ad that played all the time?
Yeah,
it was like it was that song that they used in that ad, which is what I associate it with.
Did you hear the ongoing, I know you caught the dialogue, but did you catch the ongoing references to that song? Like, this is the story of a girl?
Oh, yes.
I think it's called Absolutely by a band called 9 Days, as I'm Googling it now.
Absolutely, parentheses, story of a girl. Yeah.
Yep. I love that song in high school. I'm a little bit older than you guys, but that song was... Yeah. But I didn't catch... When did it play in this movie?
Well, her husband references, like, the lyrics to that, like when he's talking to her, he's like, your hair never falls in quite the same way.
Yeah. Okay. Your clothes never wear the same the next day, and your hair never falls in quite the same way.
Yeah. And then and then they move on with it, and you're like, what? And then like later on, there's like a couple different things, like whenever the universe plays where like she's like the maid and there's like that sex dungeon thing.
Mm-hmm.
You hear it there, and you hear it a couple more times.
Yeah, it's not. I think once it's the actual song, but one of the times it was like it sounded like an indie cover of it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't quite the actual real song. Like it was a kind of a slowed down acoustic version in the background somewhere.
That's crazy.
Yeah, this show or this movie reminds me a lot of the original 3 seasons of Arrested Development. And like, in the sense that like we mentioned earlier, you know, they'll make so many jokes that you either catch or you don't. But if you catch them and you don't laugh the first time, that's okay. They're going to keep playing on that joke. And eventually there will be an iteration of that joke that will make you laugh, you know?
Yeah. And once you go back, every previous iteration will then be funny. That wasn't
exactly. So when you watch it again and you see the original setup for it, the first time you didn't laugh, you're going to be like, oh God, here we go, you know?
Yeah. I liked Jenny Slate as the girl, the customer Big Nose. She keeps calling her.
Yeah. I like Jenny Slate a lot.
Yeah, she's funny and she's fantastic, and the whole dog thing was another like kind of like, I can't believe they're doing this and like getting away with this, like pulling this off.
Oh yeah, like swinging the dog around.
Yeah, as like a weapon,
so ridiculous,
like, kicking it or whatever, and it goes like flying off. Yeah, it was really funny.
Yeah, I like the hot dog scene, or not the hot dog scene, but the hot dog hands 2001, the Space Odyssey reference. You know, like it's just there's so much in there that, you know, like, and I think you're right. Like the second viewing, you'll catch the setup as opposed to maybe you didn't catch the setup the first time, but you know, like
the 2001 bit with the apes was pretty great.
Yeah, that was good. I love seeing the different musicals playing in the laundromat. Like the one where they have like the hot dog fingers, and it's just so bizarre and weird the second time.
Yeah. I like how in this hot dog universe they keep trying to stick their hot dog fingers into each other's mouths, like both in their pop culture content they consume and in their intimate relationships. That seems to be like part of the way it goes.
Yeah, like that's sex. You know, like the foreplay.
Yeah. Which I think at one point it was like squirting out ketchup and mustard or something, right?
In the musical thing, they were like doing that.
That's
yeah,
right. That's right. Yeah. I guess I don't know if you guys are ready to move on or you want to keep talking about the wacky stuff. But
no, go ahead.
Well,
that could go on forever.
We can transition because I really laughed out loud whenever we start diving into the like evil version of the daughter's plan. And how she like stuffs everything into an everything bagel.
Yeah.
Like just conceptually that like the fact that the everything bagel was kind of like the big like evil mass or something that's going to destroy the multiverse really made me laugh.
Yeah. It's this blue, it's like their version of like the blue light beam shooting up at the sky.
Yeah.
That Marvel movies always have.
Yeah. But she was like, I think at one point was she describing it and was like it sucks up everything and it contains all the despair and blah 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 and also poppy seed and sesame
salt
seed,
and pepper,
salt and pepper. Yeah, it's genius that like they so confidently do that and pull it off. I love it.
Yeah, and that's one thing that actually like I want to watch it again just so I can get clarity on the daughter's arc. Because you and I talked about this a little bit yesterday in text messages. Whenever we had a recording mishap and had to delay recording the rest of this episode. I was talking about how I really enjoyed the emotional mother-daughter arc and the heart of this whole thing. But also I wasn't quite clear on the overall plan and how it related to the arc that we get in the universe that we are familiar with, like the main universe. I guess I don't remember what if that universe had a name, but you know, the first one that we start out in.
Regular, I guess.
Right. The one where she's having a rocky relationship with her daughter and she doesn't want to tell her dad that her daughter is dating a girl, and you know, she tells her daughter she's getting fat and they don't have the best relationship.
Right.
I was having a hard time connecting the dots of like the daughter in the universe where her brain is fried wants to destroy everything versus her daughter pulling away from her in the Prime universe.
Yes.
Ultimately, by the end of it, I think it all ties together and it works. But I'm anxious to watch it again because that transition, that last little third act there, it felt a little, I don't want to say messy, but it felt like there was a lot there, and I couldn't quite easily connect the dots the way I could with like the husband character in all his different versions, you know?
Yeah.
Did I explain that well enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I definitely agree that the climax and everything had a couple of extra turns than I thought it was going to be. You know, like it definitely could have done it in a much neater way where, you know, she ends up telling her father that her, you know, she's dating a girl that, and, you know, did the right thing and apologized to her, and her daughter's just like, great, happy ending. You know, this is all the stuff we've set up that needs to happen, but it kind of goes like 2 extra steps and creates
like it almost like brings their rift further apart.
Yeah, like what you would think based on like I guess I want to say based on, you know, years and years of watching movies and reading stories and understanding how character arcs work, what you would think would fix everything does make it worse, and like it made it really complex and layered and murky in a way that people are for me, rather than like messy from a script point. Like at least I think so, and it's something I look forward to seeing on a second viewing too.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not sitting here saying it didn't work. It's just like you said, it had extra steps. So all of a sudden, whenever I thought we were going to get like the emotional climax and like the hug, we get that like 10 minutes later after more arguing, you know, and more swapping between universes. And I was just like, whoa, what? That emotional arc was not. It went in places I didn't expect, but still ultimately ended where I expected it to.
Yeah,
sure. Is that do we get the rock scene where she jumps off the cliff? So like they've kind of reconciled, but she's still like nihilistic and doesn't care about anything. And she, you know, like that is a tough one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like I know it works because like the emotional payoff connected for me, but the journey there felt a little confusing in that last few minutes there. Like between like the rock scene where that's when it starts. Like she starts trying to run away in the rock scene, and then she's like, I'm going to get you, you know, and the rocks start moving.
When she's like, you know, like she has a resolution with her husband where it's like, just be nice, you know, like is kind of the answer to that, right? Like fight with kindness, you know?
Yeah. Which is one of my favorite things. And we can talk about that in a bit. Like, I don't want to go down that, but I do want to talk about that because it's just, I enjoy that.
But then maybe it's because the daughter is so used to the old version, you know, and so when she fights with kindness, she's like, oh, this is even worse, you know, and pushes further away. I don't know.
Maybe. I think my take on kind of the whole thing, and it took me a minute to take a step back and kind of recontextualize that, like, you know, the reason that the daughter in the first place, or the evil daughter, wants to destroy everything, and correct me if I missed something or misinterpreted or got something wrong, but she is from the universe where they learn to jump, and her mother forces her to jump to all these places to become like better, because with each one you get more skills and all this stuff to be, and they're forcing her to jump over and over, and it fries her brain, where she experiences everything everywhere all at once, all the universes, right? And and so being overwhelmed by everything creates this desire in her to destroy it all. Like, it doesn't matter, I'm going to destroy everything because I'm sick of it all, because I experience it all the time. And like, so like metaphorically, I guess that's kind of like how her mother says, like, you're fat, right? Or like is pushing her, and it's like pushing her in a dangerous way, but is done out of love, right? So like later on, whenever she does, I guess, like kind of the right thing, like, I don't care, whatever. Like I'm gonna tell the dad. It's almost like you're still pushing me but in a way with love or in a different way, right? And like what you need to understand is that like we need to just be. I don't need your overbearing motherness, whether it's like overbearingly positive or overbearingly negative. Does that make sense?
Sure. I mean, maybe. I mean, there's definitely like the idea of like an immigrant mother with a lot of expectations for her child, you know, stuff that like I can't personally connect to.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Like I said, I just need to see the end again, I think.
Yeah. Isn't that what depression is too? Being overwhelmed by everything, everywhere, all at once, and not being able to filter out what's important and what's not, and just feeling the like weight of everything, weigh down on you. Mm-hmm. So like, so maybe the daughter's depressed and you just can't, like, I mean, obviously that she's depressed and she can't handle these things.
Yeah. Well, telling her, the daughter's grandfather, Michelle Yeoh's father, telling her that she's dating a girl doesn't solve everything, because there's still a weight from that, right? So it's
that's being overbearing,
replacing
not doing it,
replacing the weight of my mother's ashamed of me, and is she going to say it or not? Like with the weight of, oh, he knows and now I'm out. It's like the same as like you don't just like out somebody who if you know that
Sure.
they're in the closet, right? Like.
It's not on her terms.
Yeah, it's not her terms, right? And now she's got to deal with that all through her mother's actions rather than just letting her be.
Well, yeah, the revelation was more about her mother actualizing her feelings versus her daughter being her being considerate of her daughter's feelings.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. So
that's pretty awesome.
Right, and so I love that they take that extra step and make it more complex than just a typical script, which is, I mean, that's what they're doing throughout the movie is like kind of surpassing expectations, and doing more than is maybe necessary for the concept, or more than like you might expect as an audience member for like this. And it's one of the things that just blew me away about this movie constantly was just being impressed and surprised.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier you wanted to talk about the fighting with kindness and the husband.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this very obvious emotional reaction to all the scenes between the mother and the daughter, but the thing that stuck with me from this movie and the thing that was in my mind as I was leaving and really got me choked up the most was the scenes with her husband and coming to that realization. And I think he has the line of like, you're fighting because you're scared and you're confused. Right. Mm-hmm. And to me is just like another thing that this movie like touched on that like is something that is really relevant and like prevalent, maybe forever and throughout human history, I would probably, but obviously we're living through some times where that's like, spotlighted and promoted in the world and the internet, right? So it feels like it's a thing that's going on. So like that whole thing to me was probably like my favorite like emotional theme, I guess, that came out from the movie.
Yeah, it was sad. There's a whole lot of character in that one scene where Michelle Yeoh is freaking out and she starts like breaking the window to the laundromat, and Jamie Lee Curtis is like, "Oh my God, she's crazy" or whatever, and then she's sitting outside, and then her husband comes and convinces the cops, or convinces Jamie Lee Curtis to like not press charges, and the cops let her go. And she's like, "All right, uncuff her," or whatever, and she goes and sits outside, and she's like, "What did my silly husband say to you?" And she says that she remembers when her husband gave her divorce papers, like served her divorce papers, and how it made her feel. And man, if that's not tragic a little bit for that character, right? Because the whole movie, she's so snappy and mean. But the thing is, even in the beginning of the movie, when she's being snappy and mean, she can be talked to and reasoned with,
You talking about Jamie Lee Curtis?
Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Jamie Lee Curtis is basically telling her she remembers when her husband gave her divorce papers, and then that kind of recontextualizes her attitude towards everything that we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's not a horrible, mean, ugly, nasty woman, right? She's just a hurt woman who was probably difficult to live with, you know?
Yeah.
And her being divorced has only made her less agreeable as time goes on, you know? And I like how even the side characters like that get their arcs and their reasons and their humanity, I guess, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even the hibachi chef with the raccoon.
Yeah.
Gets his. But I also do like that the people that she's fighting whenever that revelation happens, like, have their own little things from earlier that they've established that, like, oh, now we get to...
Yeah.
Now we get to
now
pay
she gets
that
to
off.
fulfill their needs or whatever.
Yeah. Whether them be dominatrix based or what.
Yeah. I like how one dude she like spanks and that's like that takes him out of the fight.
Yeah, exactly. And the other one, doesn't she just give like a puppy or like a cat or something?
Something, yeah.
Yeah. And I think the way that it made me think back on the movie, whenever that whole thing kind of got applied to the googly eyes that he put on stuff and like people's laundry bags, because she hated it at the beginning, right?
Yeah, she called them Google eyes.
Yeah. She was just like, why do you do this? No more. Like, just kind of, and to rethink about it as like, that's his method of combating, you know, what is probably not the most exciting life, running a laundromat.
Mm-hmm.
and the problems that they're having or whatever. And that was just really like a whole beautiful point that I didn't expect from Googly Eyes.
Yep.
It's really moving.
Yep. And then there's that advertisement that you keep seeing, like the main picture that I see all the time where she's doing like the kung fu hands and she's got the little Google eye on her forehead.
Yep.
Oh yeah, the third eye.
Yeah, when she's putting it on, and then all of a sudden, like, I was remembering stuff from the trailer and I was like, oh, so that like when The Rock has the googly eyes, it's like, I remember this now. And like when she's putting it on, it was great. It, again, you know, it's just something you try to like imagine what could possibly be going on in the trailer when she's sticking that googly eye in the middle of her forehead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then when you get it, it's like, oh, this makes so much more sense, and it's so much more like poignant.
Sure.
It's really good.
Yeah. I like whenever in the Rakakuni verse, like how whenever they actually ride on each other's shoulders, they actually like use their little pinkies to like puppeteer their hair like they do in the movie.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's just so stupid looking in live action.
Yeah, it is. And the Pinky universe, we haven't really talked about that. The universe where everyone's pinkies are really strong.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A pinky is kung fu.
Yeah. I like that she like flexes it and it has a bicep.
Muscles.
Yeah.
So stupid.
Yeah. Out of context, you know, most of this movie is so stupid, but like all together is, you know, it's a lot like Kill Bill. I always like thought of Kill Bill as like if you mashed a bunch of movies together and then you come out with something like Kill Bill, because she's like in a Western, she's in, you know, like a Kung Fu movie, she's in all these different things. This is a lot. It was very similar in that way. It's just like you take the whole, you know, theater and just crumple it up in a ball and then see what you get, you know, like, because it's all these different movies, genres and everything. It's just a smorgasbord of everything, everywhere, and all at once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the chapters thing too. I didn't really see that coming, and just that like, and I always forgot about them, and then they'd come back and be like, oh yeah, that's right. How fun.
Yeah, I kept wondering, I was like, are they going to do a chapter 3 about all at once? They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
But I wasn't sure.
Yeah. I wasn't sure either. I was like, how much longer is this movie? Thinking we still had that one to come.
Yeah. I will say it did feel a little long by the end. Not that I'm complaining too much, but I did feel the length.
Well, like you said, with that one character turn, you expect, you know, like
things will start
everything to be
wrapping up
solved.
soon. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, there's more.
Yeah.
So
there's a little arc going on.
And there's kind of two climaxes, because she has to resolve her problems with her husband and then her problems with her daughter. And so we kind of get these two different climaxes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, so I could see how that would make it feel long, because it has these kind of like multiple endings. It's sort of like almost like Lord of the Rings, multiple endings, you know. And then of course after all that, we have to have the actual like
wrap up for the main universe.
Go into the IRS. Yeah. Did you guys have a favorite like weird, crazy action that they had to do to get to another universe?
The one that affected me the most was the paper cut
Yeah.
between the fingers. I was like, I hate this.
Yes, stop this movie. Yeah,
It was like he kept doing it, and every time I expected it to work, and I was like, ugh.
Yeah. I was thinking, you
So it
can't
was like
paper cut
30
yourself
times.
when you're trying to do it to yourself. It's hard. They have
Yeah.
to happen by accident or whatever.
And the fact that it had to be between his fingers is like, ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
Reminded
is,
me of Jackass whenever they were doing paper cuts between their toes or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say that has to be maybe like the genesis of that idea, because they do it in I think it's Jackass 2 that they do that in. But I don't know if you guys saw this, but I posted in our Slack that section of that interview with him, which I think was an interview done with like for Swiss Army Man. But they had asked one of them what got you into film or whatever. What was the thing that made you want to like be a filmmaker?
Yeah,
and he
I
was
saw
like,
that.
I think it's Jackass, because I realized that like this is content. Like,
Right.
goofing
This is a
around with
movie?
your friends, we can film this, and like you could film that, and people would watch it. Like, and it made me open up my mind to what we could do or what film could be or whatever. So I was like, so that has to be
The inception of that idea.
Yeah. But that was actually genuinely what I was thinking of, was the paper cutting one being like the most like brutal and just like, oh no.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sticking the butt plugs up the butt might be.
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
And then fighting with the man.
yeah, but I mean, not to like talk too much about it, but like butt plugs are like a mass sold thing, and nobody's really like paper cutting their inside of their fingers. But the method in which the butt plug is inserted was pretty brutal. I will give it that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it was like through the clothes too. So that's.
I know. You feel bad for the dude whenever he is no longer being inhabited by someone from a different universe.
Yeah.
Why is this happening?
Yeah. What did I do?
All right. Anything else on this?
No, I don't have anything.
No, I just go watch it. I mean, we've already said that, but
Well, if you're listening by now, you've messed up, because you should have seen it already.
Yeah, I feel like this may be a great year for movies, or at least it's certainly starting off that way. After Yang, and I don't know.
I mean, I've got 4 movies so far this year that I've given a 4 out of 5 stars to, at least.
Whoa. What are those 4 movies? Do you know off the top of your head?
Let's see. There's this one, which I have 4.5. After Yang, which was a solid 4.5. I gave Batman a 4.
Yeah,
and
me
then
too.
Jackass Forever, I gave a 4.
Okay. Yeah. I'm in the same boat too.
Yeah, we got The Northman coming out. Maybe another Ari Aster film. We got this isn't really our. Who picked this? Well, and then we got. Sorry, I went on 2 different subjects for a second, but we also have that Alex Garland movie with
Min?
What's her name? Called Min. Yeah. So maybe, guys, movies are back. I know. Well, this is way off subject, but like last
The
weekend,
Bubble told me that movie theaters may not open, though.
Oh, well, I got news.
Well, the big question is, are we going to have a David Lynch movie?
He says no.
He does say no, but it seemed so.
He's also David Lynch.
Certain. Yeah. I trust David Lynch less than I trust some other people in terms of like what he has to say.
Yeah.
Seems very like him to be like, no, what are you talking about?
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, I'd be okay with it. They say if it's true, it's like this like off the books kind of project with Laura Dern. And the last one of those I saw was Inland Empire.
Yep.
Which
And
is actually,
I don't know.
if you want to, you can go see that in the theater.
I don't.
Yeah. Okay. Did you guys watch that? I really like that movie.
Yeah, I saw it whenever it came out at Blockbuster when I was working at Blockbuster.
Okay.
I think so far it's the only David Lynch movie I actively dislike. But I haven't
have to
seen
watch
The
it
Straight
again.
Story.
Yeah.
Well,
I want to watch it again because
Yeah, me too.
it's crazy. It's like, not to here we are talking about it, but like it's like that last like 30 minutes of Mulholland Drive that's just so crazy that you like don't know what's going on until you watch it a few times.
Yeah. But for 2 hours and a half.
Yeah. But for 2.5 hours and you get like 30 minutes of regular movie. Because like for 30 minutes I was like, what is Mike talking about? I don't think this movie's that hard to follow or weird or bizarre and off the wall. And then it goes off the wall and stays there for a real long time.
Yeah. Then it's like, let's do the rabbits thing for a while. And then let's
That
just
was my
have Laura
favorite
Dern
part.
screaming and running down the street.
Yeah, but it was, Chris.
yeah. Gotta love those rabbits.
But
okay.
Back to, I guess, the episode. I actually give Everything Everywhere All at Once 5 stars. That's where I'm at.
I did 4.5. I think my like philosophy on 5 stars is like it's got to be a second or third viewing. You know, like a little bit of time afterwards.
It's
At
fair.
least that's what my philosophy is right now.
Yeah, my philosophy is that these aren't carved in stone. And
Sure,
so
sure.
how do I feel? And like, I think I mentioned it earlier that like this is checking a lot of boxes on like films that end up being my favorite films from like the
Sure.
past years, right? Like, and just I already want to go see it again a second time, and they like moved me emotionally, and like I walked out of the theater feeling like I hadn't seen anything that made me quite feel that way, and like kept thinking about it and couldn't stop thinking about it. So I think it's a safer bet to get 5 stars right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sitting at 4.5, but it could change. You know, time could make it go up or down a little bit. Like I said, that second viewing is really what I'm looking forward to.
Me too. I think about a week and a half I'm going to see it again. I'm convinced my wife to go and convincing her that she'll like it. And so I hope she
So
does.
specific.
What is?
A week and a half.
Yeah, I know. Well, we've got plans and stuff like that keep it from being any other time until that's like the earliest time we can go, basically.
Nice.
So that's how we know so specifically.
Cool. Well, I hope it's 5 stars the second time, sir.
All right. I guess then that is the end of this episode.
Yes.
I think so.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Of course, as always, thanks Jake Wagner Russell for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
All right, stay tuned to this channel, this feed, subscribe. Our next episode will be a casually criterion over Federico Fellini's 8.5,
Yay.
which is very exciting.
Yeah, that's a
Then,
big
I think the week after that, we're doing The Northman, which is also exciting. So,
Yes, that could be a big one. 8.5 is
Yeah.
a bona fide classic big one.
indeed.
Sure. All right, guys. I don't care what universe you're in. You guys have a good day. And write to us about what you thought about this movie. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.